So we talk about cost estimation. Kindly listen to the video.
In order to reduce the total hours of plants, to install efficient light bulbs to help minimize
Guys. Any lesson learned from the video? What have you learned so far from the video? Anything you have learned? What are some of the methods of cost estimation? Methods? So you look at cost estimation. So from that particular video, you can learn that cost estimation is a process of trying to predict future costs. We need to know how much we can incur in the future. That's what you call cost estimation. A method of predicting what can happen to the dependent variable, to the dependent variable. If we have changes in the independent variable, we call it cost estimation. So cost estimation. So I've been told that determining how costs will change with the output or other measurable factors of an activity is of importance for decision making, planning, and control. If you want to budget for the future, for example, you need to be able to predict future costs. Remember, a budget is a prediction of the cost that you're going to incur in the future. So what can help you in prediction or for future prediction is what we call cost estimation. So the basic idea in cost estimation is to estimate the relation between costs and variables affecting costs. The basic formula for estimation of cost is what? Total cost is equal to fixed plus variable cost. Or we say the formula for estimating cost is y is equal to a plus bx, where y is our total fixed cost, or we call it our dependent variable, because it changes or it depends because of what? With changes in the independent variable. F is our fixed cost or constant, or we call it the y-intercept, where the line cuts the y-axis. Our V is a variable cost per unit of output, and our X is 1 unit of output. But the only difficulty is separating between what? Fixed and variable cost. So if you want to predict the behavior of cost, then you can use what you call cost estimation. So we can be able to represent cost estimation in a mathematical form. And in mathematical form, we represent the cost estimation using what you call the cost function. So how do you estimate the cost function? So the first thing is we have to determine the dependent variable. Just a minute. I proceed. Okay, we say in cost estimation, the first thing is you have to find out the dependent variable. But remember, the cost function is in the form of y is equal to a plus bx. That's how we record the cost function. So that is from that particular public chart. The cost function is in the form of y is equal to x, a plus bx. So the first thing you do when you're trying to come up with a cost estimation function, you have to select the dependent variable or y to be predicted. Remember, y is our total cost. You have to find out what is going to be predicted. Is it material cost? Is it labor cost? Is it overhead cost? Any kind of cost. That is our dependent variable. Then we have to select the cost driver. The cost driver is what can change the cost or what can cause a change in the cost. So our cost driver here is what we call our independent variable. For example, direct labor hours or our X. Our Y, we call it dependent variable. Our X, we call it independent variable. or cost driver or predictor variable or response variable. So you have to come up with a cost driver. What can cause a change in the cost? For example, direct labor hours. If labor hours increase, the cost can increase. Machine hours increase, it can also increase. Then find more data on dependent variable and independent variable. Then you plot on the graph. Then you have to go at the reliability. So a major area of concern is how do you come up with the cost function? Or how do you develop a cost estimation function? Well, there are so many methods of coming up with a cost estimation function. The four major methods are accounting analysis method, engineering methods, scatter graph, or the high-low method. Then we have the regression analysis method. So the first method of cost estimation is account analysis. So the account analysis calls for a review of each cost account used to record costs that are of interest. So in account analysis method, you have to look at the items or the expenses of the firm. You classify whether they are fixed or variable. That's what you call account analysis. You take the items of the account or any expenditure. For example, if you have the profit and loss account, kuna hiyo expenditure section, you have to identify from those particular expenses which expenses are fixed or which costs are fixed and which ones are variable. So that aspect of you dissecting between the total cost into fixed cost and variable cost, you call it account analysis method. So you have an illustration there of how costs can be classified into fixed and variable. So for example, we have an account. If you talk about indirect labor, the total was 321. They're classified into variable was 103, fixed is 218. Direct material, the same, building occupancy. So your work is just to know which costs are fixed and which ones are variable. So from what we have, our total variable cost is 1426 and our fixed cost is 1245. So how do you get total cost? Total cost for the period, we take a total of variable costs and what? Fixed cost. So our equation is in the form of total cost is equal to F plus Vx or Y plus Bx. V is the variable cost per unit of our slope or our gradient. So our total cost function will be equal to total fixed cost from the equation was 1245 plus our B. How do we get a variable cost per unit? Variable cost per unit, you take the total variable cost divided by the number of units. So meaning our cost function is 1245 plus 0.31x. So remember in the equation, we are predicting the cost of 4,600 units. So it will be what? 1245 plus 1426. So that's what we call the account analysis method. It's as simple as that. You have to identify the variable cost from the expenses that you have and the fixed cost from the expenses that you also have. Our next method of cost estimation. So first, our next method is of cost estimation is engineering methods, whereby under the engineering method, so engineering estimates of cost are made by measuring work involved in a task. So it's all about analysis of the work that has been performed and the cost involved. So that's what we call the engineering method. That is, you have to read more on that. The next technique of cost estimation is what we call the scatter graph method. Here we identify the cost function by plotting the data on the graph. So we are saying comparing the y variable, dependent variable, which is cost, and the activity level. It can be the number of units, it can be labor hours, it can be machine hours. So you plot y against x, where y is our cost and our x is our activity level, or we call it our independent variable or our cost driver, because the cost changes in the what? In the dependent variable. So you plot the data on the graph. So that particular data we draw on the graph, we call it a scatter. That particular graph is termed as what? Scatter graph method. So they're saying that so to prepare a scatter graph, you have to first obtain the relevant data of cost incurred and the level of activity involved. So the number of observations to include depends on the availability of data and the cost benefit of obtaining the reliable data. So when you draw the data on the graph, the slope of the line represents the estimated variable cost. So the slope, or we call it our gradient, is our variable cost per unit, or our B. And the intercept with the vertical axis represents the estimated fixed cost. That particular line will cut the vertical axis or the y-axis. So where the line cuts the y-axis, we call it the y-intercept or our fixed cost. So we determine the line of best fit using what you call judgment. So yes, it's just a visual representation of the work that has been done. So we have an illustration. We have an illustration here. So data for the past 15 months are collected from Greenham Company to estimate variable and fixed manufacturing overheads. The data was represented on the scatter graph. So once the points were collected or plotted, the line was drawn to fit the points as closely as possible. The line was extracted to the vertical axis on the scatter graph in order to identify the intercept. So we have a period of 5 months. The direct labor hours here is our X. That is our cost driver or dependent. We call it independent variable. Then we have overhead cost. That is our total cost. Or we call it our dependent variable. So meaning that direct labor hours is a cost driver because of changes in overhead costs. So the activity level, which is our direct labor hours, we plot on the x-axis, and the total cost is our y. We plot on the y-axis. So your work is to go ahead and plot the data on the graph. So for that particular graph, we're saying that on the x-axis, y-axis represents costs, x-axis represents labor hours. So you're plotting the overhead cost against the labor hours. So make sure you draw a straight line to cut at least 2 points. The periods were 15. So to cut across 2 points. So where the line cuts the y-axis, we said it is our y-intercept or our fixed cost. In the gradient, change in y over change in x is what we call a variable cost per what? Per unit. So that is the second method of the third method of cost estimation. The fourth method of cost estimation is what we call the high-low method. The high-low method is where we use only 2 points to estimate the total cost. to estimate the total cost. So here we took at the highest level of activity and the lowest. We don't use all the data. We only identify two variables or 2 points, the highest and the lowest, to estimate the cost function. We have an illustration. The following observations were recorded over the past 5 months. Over the past 5 months, we have January, February, March, April, so we have months, units, and overheads. From January, I think we had jump. We have July, December, September, October, November, December, January. The units, we have the labor hours and overhead. So we see that the units here represent, an overhead is a cost. So meaning costs are represented by the Y, and the units or anything else represented by X. So using the Euler method, find a cost equation and estimate overhead costs for the month of February if total units expected for the period are 300 units. So what is the solution? We have said under the Euler method, we identify the highest and the lowest. So if we talk about activity or the units, the highest is 250. The lowest is 50. The highest is 250. And cost, the highest is what? 600. And also look at the lowest. The lowest activity is 50 and the lowest cost is what? 200. So therefore, how do we get the unit variable cost? We just take the change in Y over change in X. So how do you get change in Y? You take the highest value of Y, which is 600, minus the lowest value of Y, which is 200, divided by the highest value of X, which is 250, minus the lowest value of X, which is 50. Therefore, our B, which is a variable cost per unit, is what? 2 shillings per unit of labor. So we need to come up with our total cost function. How do we get the total cost function? Total cost function is fixed plus variable cost. Fixed cost plus variable cost. So how do you get the fixed cost? We can take any value, the highest or the lowest, be placed in the equation. So we assume our total cost here is 600 from the data is equal to fixed cost plus, remember our formula is TC is equal to F plus Vx. Our V is the unit variable cost, which is 2 shillings. Into brackets, the variable cost or the number of units at 600 is 250. So meaning our F is 100 shillings. So we use what we call the substitution method to find the value of F by inserting the value of the total cost, the V, and the total number of units. So in case we want to produce 300 units in the month of February, we just have to put into the equation, substitute into the equation, whereby our equation is what? From what we have, our equation will be TC will be equal to F plus V 2x, where our F is 100, plus 2 into brackets. Our number of units that are needed is what? 500. So meaning for February, they are going to incur how much? 1,100 shillings. So that's what we call the Euler method. We identify the cost function using the highest and the lowest values. So regression is also a statistical technique of estimating costs. So it definitely, remember, one of the challenges under the Euler method is that it does not take into account all the units. but also only looks at the highest and lowest values. However, regression analysis takes into account all the units. That is the highest, all the units from the highest, the lowest, any other units. That's an advantage of regression. So it is a statistical technique that can be used to predict costs. So our regression equation is y is equal to a plus bx in case of simple regression. Or when we have so many variables, it will be y is equal to a plus bx, b1, x1, b2, x2, b2, x3, and all that, and forever. So where our y, the total cost to be estimated, our a is our fixed cost, b is the coefficient, or we call it the variable cost per unit, or the slope or the gradient, and x is the units of activity. Under regression, we need to find the value of total cost and the variable cost per unit. So our total cost here, we need to get the value of fixed cost, which is our A, and variable cost per unit, which is our B. So how do we get B? B is n sum of xy minus sum of x, sum of y, over n sum of x squared minus sum of x, then u square. Y, our A, which is our intercept, is sum of y minus b sum of x over n. So n is the number of observations. So we have an illustration. The data below relates to activity X and the respective costs incurred in the past month are required to find the regression equation of Y. So we say that the equation is Y is equal to A plus BX. And our most important aid is to find the value of A and the value of B. So you have to list the number of units, the periods, or the number of observations. Here we are looking from months of January to May. So meaning our periods here will be 5 periods. We have the column for X, column for Y, the sum of XY, sum of X squared from the equation. So of course, xy means to take the value for x multiplied with the value of y. So from the equation, our sum of x, we take n sum of xy. So our n was 5 periods. Sum of xy from the solution is 1680 minus sum of x, sum of y. Sum of x is 20 multiplied with the sum of y, which is 400, divided by n sum of x squared. Our x squared is 90 times 5 minus sum of x squared. Our total sum of x was 20, then you square. So meaning our b, which is the variable cost per unit, is 8. The intercept will be sum of y minus b sum of x over n. The sum of y from the equation is 400 minus b multiplied with the sum of x. So it is 8 times 20. And the other divided by 5. So meaning our a is 48. So therefore, regression equation will be y is a, which is 48, plus bx, which is 8x. So that is all about cost estimation. We have so many questions about self-review questions on cost estimation, developing a cost function, and all that. In case of any question, tuangalie. So tumesema under high-low method we are going to identify, there is no substitution of 250. Okay, in the high-low method, the first thing you have to identify the variable cost per unit. Tumesema we are following the formula TC is equal to F plus Vx. We say TC is our total cost. From what you can see, F is our fixed cost plus Vx. V is a variable cost per unit. X is the number of units. So the first thing is you have to get the V, which is a unit variable cost. So how do we get unit variable cost? We take change in Y over change in X. So meaning we take the highest value of X of Y minus the lowest value of Y divided by the lowest value or the highest value of X minus the lowest value of X. Just change in Y over change in X. However, so tumesema our cost, which is overheads, is our Y, and the labor hours is our X. So when talking about Y, we take the highest value of Y, which is 600, and then we subtract the lowest value of Y, which is 200. Then we divide by our change in X. The same thing, we take the highest value of X, divide by the lowest value of X. So meaning our V will be 2 shillings per unit of labor. If you do the calculation, it will give you 2. So our next question is you have to find the value of F. So how do we get value of F? We can get the value of F using what we call the substitution method. Our main agenda is to get the value of F. So getting the value of F, so meaning our equation will be, we need to get the value of F. How do you get the value of F? We substitute. So we substitute either by using the highest unit of the highest values of the dependent and independent variable, or the lowest values of dependent or independent variable. So from the cost function, our total cost is equal to F plus Vx. That's what we did. So we replace our total cost with 600, the highest value of the dependent variable. We don't have the value of F. We are looking for F, but we have the value of V and X. So what can help us to get the value of F? So our V, which is a variable cost, is 2 shillings, into brackets to 50. We have the value of X. Remember, under the overheads, 600 goes hand in hand with what? The labor hours of 250. So replace with the value of X. So we have to find the value of F. Of course, by substitution, the value of F is 100. So the question was asking us to estimate the cost of what? This one is supposed to be 500. Estimate the cost of 500 units. How do we estimate? You replace into the equation, meaning our equation is what? Total cost is equal to 100 plus 2 into brackets X. So that is our question. Our equation, meaning that we have the fixed cost, we have the V, but we don't have X. So meaning if we have changes in X, it causes changes in total cost. So meaning our total cost from the equation will be what? Is equal to 100 plus 2 into brackets 500. Yeah, so you're finding the value. If you have the value of X, you can be able to predict the value of what? Total cost. So meaning our total cost will be 1,100. Unless there is another question on that. Tumesema disadvantage of high-low method is that it does not take into account all the values. It only considers the highest and the lowest values. That's the disadvantage of the high-low method. Ukiwa na regression tunatumia values zote. But kwa high-low method, you only use the highest and the lowest to determine our cost estimation function. Any other question? Kuna swali ingine? So I'm going to give a question here. Let's look at this particular question. If we can. We can look at an illustration of estimating fixed costs using the variable and what? The high-low method. Any question on today's class? I'm going to give out a particular question I need you to try before we call it a day. So under regression, if you check your notes under regression, we have a formula of getting the value of B and the value of A. So kuna formulas kuna zenu. So the equation is just y is equals to A plus bx, but kuna formula, that one is easier for you to get the value of B and the value of A. So just go back to your notes here. So I'm going to give out a question. So let's try that question. So try that question, provide answers in the what? In the public chat forum. The following information relates to pillar manufacturers for the first 6 months of the year ended 30th June 2018. So kindly write down the question. Solve for me using the high-low method. Estimate the fixed element and variable element of the machine maintenance cost. So kindly do question number 1. Kama uko na swali, you can ask. Therefore, so our variable cost per unit here is 4 shillings per machine hour. Then our fixed cost is 350,000. That is right. So what is the cost? So question 2, formulate the machine maintenance cost equation in the form of y is a plus bx. So therefore the equation, our y is what you're going to predict. So equation is equal to our a. Why is this thing not working? Y is a. We say that our a is a y-intercept or variable cost per unit, or the fixed cost. So meaning our a, he said is 350,000 plus b is 4. So that's the answer for B. So that is the formulated machine maintenance cost equation in the form of y is a plus bx. So you have to declare the value of a and declare the value of b. Meaning that if you have a change in x, it will affect the change in y. Then that question is using the equation in 2 above, estimate the machine maintenance cost for July 2018 if the estimated machine hours are 9,000. So using the equation in 2 above, so meaning we are going to use the equation that we have, y is 350,000 plus x, to predict the machine maintenance cost of what? 9,000 hours. How do you go about it? Anybody with an idea of how you can go about it? Any idea for the third part? So it is what? We replace the value of x. So therefore, remember the machine maintenance cost was our y. Y is equal to 350,000 plus 350,000 shift plus our b was 4 shift into brackets 9,000. I think it will give you 386,000 shillings. Any other problem? So I'm hoping that all of us are well with today's class, unless Naswali. Do you have any other question? So kama hakuna swali, let's meet in the discussion forum. Guys, participate in the discussion forum. No single day have we ever participated in the discussion forum. So I'm going to post a question in the discussion forum. Kindly make sure you attempt that question. Otherwise, we have Rukia present, Peter, Wilson, Jane, Collins. Collins is not present, and Mutura. Any other question? So enjoy the rest of the evening, but I'm going to give you work and I'm going to put what? A time limit. Make sure you try those questions. Because I think there's no one in the question.